Hello there everyone and welcome back to another Muunilinst mock update video. In this video I'll be continuing my work from last episode where I'll be making lots of progress on the second level of the next large scale building, and I also start to work on the roof design as well, and I asked for a good amount of feedback, so make sure to stay tuned to the end of the video. Real quick, happy 4th of July to everybody who is celebrating. Make sure to celebrate it safely and remember why we are celebrating the day, celebrating our independence as Americans. So just wanted to mention that real quick since this is coming out on July 4th. So make sure to have a good celebration and a safe celebration if you are celebrating. So lots of exciting progress in this episode. And without any further ado, let's get started. All right, guys. So today's episode is going to be focusing on that back building that you saw from the previous episode. I got a lot of great feedback from you guys on that building. So thank you guys for all of the awesome feedback, and you guys seem to like how the build is turning out so far. And I thought I'd start out with the wide shot. I'm going to leave an info card on screen if you guys are new and haven't seen all the details of the mock so far. I did an overview episode a couple weeks back, pretty much showing off everything that's been done on the mock so far. But for now, we're going to go ahead and move over to the rest of the city portion, and the plan for this episode is to finish that building up. So that's what we're going to do for this episode. Alright, so I've done a little bit of work on this building. You can see on both sides there I've actually created the wall and extended the balcony. Last episode I only had the front done. Now the walkway goes all the way around, and as you can kind of see back there, I've got the pillar and all the walls on both sides. So now this kind of front and side section of the build is pretty much getting more complete. So we've got the windows over here and everything like that as well with the pillars. So the building is now looking pretty good. The next step is you're going to see I've got a couple kind of spots down here I've got to fill in with tiles, and then the whole kind of balcony area up there needs a lot more work in terms of tiles, so I got to put all the tiles on there. And then after that I got to figure out how I'm going to build the roof. One thing that I'm kind of noticing with this building is, to me it almost seems like the more I build it, the more like a cubic structure, if that makes sense. So like instead of having curved roofs like this, it would kind of just go up in more of like a box shape or a rectangle shape and kind of just smooth off at the top. But I don't know how that's going to look like. I can kind of envision like a tower instead of like a building. So like this was like a building with a roof on it, but this might be more of like a tower where it just kind of goes up in like block sections of squares. That's what I'm kind of imagining right now, but at the same time, I'm not sure how good that's going to look. A smoothed off angled roof like these other buildings might actually look better, so I'm really not too sure yet. But the plan is to work on the tiles that I need to do to kind of make this thing look all good and clean it up, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the roof. But I'm not really sure what I'm going to do yet, and that's kind of the beauty of these episodes, is I kind of figure it out along the way and then see what you guys have to say. Alright guys, so I did a little bit more work here on the tiling for this whole building. So down over there on the bottom you can see that I've now tiled it all out and it's looking pretty good. Same way on the other side over there, kind of hard to see, but all the sides are now tiled off. This top part is also tiled off right there. I know it's a little bit hard to see, but it's really just light gray tiles, and then up against the wall is sand green, and there's some jumper plates in there so that I actually have some room to place some troops, because I want to have some studs to actually be able to place troops. But pretty simple, just light gray pretty much on everything, and then sand green up against the wall, and then down there similar patterns with light gray and sand green mixed in with each other. But that is what I just got done. Next step is going to be moving on to the roof, which is going to be a challenge because I have a hard time building roofs. I seem to suck at roofs and doorways. Those are like my two things I have a hard time with, so this should be pretty interesting, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. Alright guys, so this is the first design I came up with for a roof. Something you're going to be noticing here is, we'll see how many designs I go through, but I'm trying a couple new things here. So I'm using these slope pieces. I don't remember the exact dimensions of them, but they're kind of these little larger slope pieces, kind of stacking them up all the way throughout here. Now normally what you would do is stack them up kind of like this, and then you just attach them straight up like this on a building. I'm realizing the roof right now that we are working with, I made it a little bit too small to do something like that. So what I had to do is essentially this needs to be angled, and this bottom is not actually going to attach to the studs. It essentially needs to be kind of set on top of it so that I'm able to get an interesting, unique angle. So you kind of can see like this, there's some sort of interesting angle going on that I wouldn't be able to get if I would just have them placed normally on the, sorry, I'll just readjust the camera here. I wouldn't be able to normally get this angle if I just would have had these attached to get this kind of angle like this. So in order to get this angle, what I had to do, and this is, see the inside here, so you can see there's a couple of hinge pieces. I've got 4 of them right there, 4 things, and each of them have 2 to connect to each other. And essentially what that did was able to keep this one big piece, because what I was doing was I was just setting it, and the friction and force from these 2 pieces being leaned up against each other was the only thing keeping it on the building, and obviously that was not going to work because it kept falling down if I bumped it or anything like that. So I needed some way to keep this structurally stable. So I put these kind of hinge pieces and connected them, and then since these pieces, see if I can try to get a good angle, since these pieces can be angled, I angled them in the correct way I wanted to, and then attached them to the sides. So it actually ended up working really, really well. And I'm able to get that kind of unique angle that I want to get, that I wouldn't be able to get otherwise, because otherwise it'd kind of look like this, where it would stack on like this, and I really wouldn't get that angle. Hopefully that makes sense. But I also tiled off the top sand green. I think that actually adds a lot to it and makes it look pretty good. So the next step is going to be putting this thing on the building. One thing I am noticing here, and you kind of saw this, there's a lot of gap space right here, right? You can see it on the other side over here. There's a lot of gap space. Now the problem is, this is kind of a flaw of this design. Since I'm not attaching the building like this, and since it'll just be set right there, there isn't, this angle right here, there's nothing I can do to make like bricks fit in with it. Because normally if it was just set on like this, you know, if it was just placed like this, I could put plates underneath here and it would fit. But since it's angled like this, I can't really get anything inside of there easily. So that's something I'm going to have to figure out, and we'll see how that looks. But this is design number 1. I'm going to go ahead and try to attach it to the building. Alright guys, so design number 1 is up for the roof, and I also added in the thing behind it. I'll show you that in a second with that sand green. But here is kind of what we're looking at. Right off the bat, one thing I don't like is how tall the building is. That might sound kind of weird. Or sorry, not how tall the building is, but how tall the roof is. The reason I say this, and I don't think I've talked about this yet in the series, is proportions, which kind of goes along with scaling. But the fact that this roof that I have on there right now is kind of larger than the whole second floor together, if that makes sense. So like from that pillar to the top of the sand green, that roof of just slopes is kind of bigger, and I don't know if that really works for a look. What I do like about it is how, like, the pointiness of it. I like how the building kind of has a point to it. I do actually like that up top, but I don't like how big the roof is, if that makes sense. That was the big thing about it. And here on the side, you can kind of get a little bit of a different look at the side. It doesn't look too bad from on the side right here. So overall, I think it is an okay design. I just think it might need to be a little bit smaller, because I think the roof is just a little bit too big. And then this is what I was talking about earlier, where it's going to be hard to line stuff up exactly. So essentially what's going to happen is, since I can't really put anything right in here, I have to move it a layer back, and you can see I've got another sand green wall stuck behind there. But I need to figure out how to make sure it fills up all the space, because right now it just fills up a little bit of the gap. But you can see how it's kind of offset. It has to be offset in order to fit back there due to how I sloped it. You also can see along the side how it's not actually attached to the brick or the studs. That's kind of what I was speaking about earlier, trying to figure something out, because if it would have just stuck on the bricks, I wouldn't have been able to get this kind of cool angle. So I kind of like it not sitting on the bricks itself, if that makes sense, which is why I had to use that design that I showed you guys with those kind of hinge pieces. So the good thing is it's a one big piece, and it's not going to really come down, which is nice. But overall, the thing I'm not a fan of is just the overall size of it. I think it's a little bit too big. So I'm going to mess around a little bit more and try to see what I can come up with. But for now, here is phase 1. Okay, here is what I did next. Something I wanted to try was making it a sharper angle and less slopes. So you can see I've done the same exact thing, where they're just going to set on top of there using the same design that I showed last video clip, with that big tent looking like roof right there. But for this one, I wanted to try it a little bit smaller, so now the roof looks smaller. I like this size a lot more, if that makes sense, where the proportions look a lot better, where the roof is a lot smaller than the actual kind of second layer. I want that second layer to stick out more, because if the roof is taller than this second layer, then the roof is going to be the thing you're looking at, and I don't want the roof to be the centerpiece because it's not as detailed, just slopes. I want this bottom part of the building to be the centerpiece, and I think with this size of a roof, I think the centerpiece is the building and the roof is kind of just a secondary thing that you're not going to pay attention to, when versus this design where it was so big and bulky that that's the thing you pay attention to most. So I do like the size of this one a lot more. Now, the same problem is going to arise here. That middle gap is at an angle, and I can't really think of any way to get bricks in there because it's not lined up in the traditional sense. So I'd have to find some sort of technique that's technically like not going to interlock the bricks or anything like that, just because due to the angle. So that's going to be the next step here. But I think I like this size a lot more in terms of proportions and scale, and I want the building to stick out, not the roof. So that's the second design I came up with. I'm going to go ahead and mess around and try to see if I can figure out how to fill up that middle gap there under the roof, and we'll see what it looks like. Alright guys, so I've now worked on the building a lot more and added in the roof, as you can see. Overall, here's kind of what I did. So essentially, I did the roof, and I showed you guys that last time, and I just had to fill in the little gap. Now the problem I was realizing with the gap was I tried to put the gap inside of the sloped pieces, if that makes sense. So it was underneath the roof part in there, kind of on the opposite side. I didn't really think it looked the best, so I tried this right here where the wall is out front, so the gap is filled from the front, and then the slopes are behind it, if that makes sense. There's still a few more gaps in there, but here's kind of what I mean. The slopes are behind this wall now, so essentially this wall just builds up and the slopes are kind of placed behind it. That's what I ended up going with. Obviously there's a few more gaps I need to fill. Overall, I think this works. I'm not too sure how I feel about it yet. I think what ultimately needs to happen here is I need to spend some more time figuring out what I want to do with this building. As of right now, I'm kind of out of time and need to get this video out for you guys to get it out on time. I don't know. I think, again, the size of the roof works. I'm happy with the way this looks. It looks a little better from this side. I tried to extend the roof, pretty much adding in one more layer of slopes on each side, and it kind of overhanged. I think that looked a little bit too big. I think the big problem that I'm looking at now is this front wall right here. I just haven't been able to get that right yet. So here, I'll go in for a little bit of a closer look. I just haven't been able to get this thing right yet. Not in terms of the actual design, but the placement, because when I placed it on the inside of the slopes, essentially what I meant was, imagine this is behind these slopes and the slopes kind of overhang it, so this feels like it's behind it. I wasn't really too sure how that looked. So then I tried this, but now I don't know how that looks entirely either. Who knows? I'll have to see what you guys think about this building, but again, I'm not the best at making roofs. Roofs are kind of my, I don't know, not my strong suit, but I think this is going to do it for this episode. I'm going to be checking and seeing what you guys have to say for suggestions on this build, because I think this building looks great. I'm very proud of it, except for just the roof. I'm kind of stuck on what exactly to do. I think I'm going to, throughout the next week, kind of try to work out and find some new ways to do the roof. Otherwise, I'll wait a few episodes on it. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for this episode. One thing that I do want to mention real quick is I pretty much am all out of pretty much most of all my sand green parts, and my light gray parts are pretty much all gone. All my detail pieces I'm almost out of. So I need to make an order, and it's probably going to have to be a pretty big order, so I'm not sure when it's going to get in yet. So depending when that order gets in, I won't really be able to move on to any more new episodes of Muunilinst. So I'll try to get that order in fairly soon. So I don't know what that means for an episode next weekend. It'll all just depend on if I get the parts in on time. That's kind of what it's going to depend on. But yeah, that's going to do it for this episode. Here is the building that we got done for this episode. I'm pretty happy with it, except for the roof. I kind of need to take some time away from this thing because I've kind of been grinding and trying to work this thing out for the past couple days now. I need to take a step back and try to come back at it with some fresh ideas. So there is the building. We got the rest of the building done though. And I think because from right here, the building looks good. You just look at the roof, it's like, oh, it needs some work. But overall, for this part down here, I think it looks pretty good. So that's about it for this episode. Let's go ahead and move on to the outro. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you did enjoy. I've been taking some more time to look at the roof, and it's starting to grow on me a little bit, but there's still a couple things that I need to fix, and I've got a couple ideas on how to kind of address some of those issues that I'm seeing. But of course, I'm open to any sort of feedback or ideas that you guys have for the building in general and also the roof. But hopefully, regardless of the roof, you are enjoying the rest of the building. Overall, I'm very, very happy with the way this building is turning out so far. So that's about it. As always, leave your feedback in the comment section below. Hope you guys have a great day, and may the force be with you always.